Hello, Howell, Carnegie District Library artists. We are painting a landscape today. You should have your paint brushes, your paint, canvas, and a cup of water. You can use any cup you have. Just make sure you are aware that that is your paint cup and not your water cup for staying hydrated. Go ahead and open up your brushes. You will notice they are going to be firm. That's just to keep them in the same shape that they have been formed. To remove that, you're just going to get them a little bit wet and just start to work them a bit with your fingers. It'll feel a little bit slimy, and that's okay. It's not going to hurt you, but it's just going to get the brushes ready to work with. If you are working with brushes that have already been used, then you won't need to do this step. You will be good to go. And once your brushes feel like they are loose and ready to work with, then you can set them aside. We are going to be creating a color wheel in a little bit. So I do want us to get started with our palette just by drawing on your palette a circle with a triangle on the inside. Okay, it doesn't need to be perfect. The circle is going to represent our color wheel, where we're going to put all of our colors. The triangle on the inside is going to identify where our primary colors are. And we have the primary colors here. They're the colors that we have. Yellow, blue, and red are our primary colors. So right where that triangle edge meets that circle, that's where we're going to put red, yellow, and blue, and we'll do that in a minute. We're actually going to start by setting up our composition first. So in order to do that, I want us to just play with some yellow paint, but I don't want it to be too dark. We will actually be able to see the yellow coming through if we just use a pure yellow. So let's go ahead, add your yellow, and I'm just going to use kind of a medium-large size brush to grab a decent scoop of yellow paint. I'm going to say this is going to be my spot for yellow, which means these two are going to be for red and blue later. So this spot is for my yellow. And then I'm going to add some white to mix with it. And I'm going to just mix that white with yellow down here. This space is not going to be part of my color wheel, so I'm just going to play with this space for right now. I do not want to put a dirty brush into a clean cup of paint, so I want to make sure I stir up my cup, or my brush in my cup, just like I'm stirring up chocolate milk. And then I dab it down on my paper towel. If you don't have paper towel, if you have an old rag, if you've got an old, apron, whatever you've got is fine. If you, obviously you don't want to get yourself soaked, so you want to have something. So get yourself an old wash rag or an old paper towel, anything that you can wipe your brush on, to make sure it's nice and clean is going to be perfect. All right, once that's clean, now I can grab a nice scoop of white. And now I can mix that with my yellow. If I need a bit more yellow, I didn't take too much. If I need a bit more yellow, I'm just going to scoop a little bit over. And I won't get my yellow too dirty, but I do still have my yellow in my cup. So if this gets a little bit dirty on me, not going to worry about it too much. I just want a nice light yellow. This is pretty perfect. As long as I can see it on my canvas, that's going to be just what I want. I don't need this medium large brush for painting right away. So I can go ahead, I'm going to just kind of scoop off the excess paint from the side of my brush so I can use it. And I'm going to clean off my brush while I've got it. You don't want to leave dirty paint on your brush, you want to clean it right away when you're done using it. The paint will start to harden. Obviously, when we're done for today, you are going to want to do a nice clean on your brush as well, because you want your brushes to stay in as great a shape as they can. And these are acrylic. Acrylic is a plastic-based type of paint. So if you leave it on your brush, like I said, it's going to harden on you, and your brush is going to be garbage. So that's not what we want. Laying out our composition means choosing where is everything going to go on our page, okay? This is a landscape, so obviously I'm going to have land, right? When we are deciding which way our page is going, it can go either way. It can go horizontal, it can go vertical. This orientation, horizontal, is actually called landscape. If we were to put our page this way, this is called portrait. You can go either way. This is usually what people do, landscape orientation for a landscape painting. But it's up to you. Turn it, whichever way is making you feel good. Land and sky is pretty much what we want to define right now. And I'm going to use either of my smaller brushes is fine. I'm going to use my smallest brush, I think. But anything that's small that's going to work for you, it's just fine. Compositionally, it's always a good idea to keep things out of the middle, to keep from separating things in half. It's going to be more interesting for your viewer if things are not exactly cut in half. So if I am deciding where my sky is meeting my land, where that horizon line is, I want to either put it at the top third of my page or at the bottom third, but I don't want to put it right in the middle. It's just not going to look as good compositionally. So I'm going to take some of my paint and I'm going to decide, do I want more land or do I want more sky? This is your painting, so it's up to you. If you want to really focus on plants or different land masses on your, on your land space, then make that space really big and have your sky be small. If you're more interested in putting different colors in your sky, you're really excited about, clouds or, that space, maybe make that space really big. It's up to you. Just stay out of the very, very middle. Stay out of there. Either go low or go high. Also, think about if you want to have multiple layers for your land. So if you wanted to have some land that's in front, a little bit closer to us, some land that's kind of farther behind, and then maybe even some that's farther behind, that's going to be up to you. I think I'm going to do something like that. And I think I want my land to be, not quite straight. So I think I want some land kind of high. I think I'm going to have my land be kind of high. And I think I want some in the front. And I think I'm going to do 3 spaces of different land on my painting. So I'm thinking this will be my closest piece of my land. This is going to represent what is closest to my viewer. Next, I'm going to add another layer. So I think I'll have some land over here. Maybe I'll make it a bit higher. And that's the beauty with yellow, is that we're not really going to see these mistakes, but you do kind of want to blend it out if you make a mistake like I did, or if you change your mind, go ahead and kind of blend it out so we're not going to see a really dramatic line of yellow in your painting. It'll cover up pretty easy, but just spread it out a little bit if you do see it. And I'm kind of in the middle, right where I told you guys not to be. So I'm going to make sure I get a third piece of land. I think I'm going to have kind of like almost like mountains coming on in the back. And again, now is the time to make changes to our composition. If I am happy with where this is going, I'm gonna keep it. If I wanna start to change it up, if I wanna do something different, I can change it up. So I'll just show you where I'm at. I have defined a few different pieces of land. I feel like I'm interested in how this land turned out, and I like the back, but this for me is feeling too flat. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and make that a little bit more interesting. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Take a moment. Again, blending out the changes you've made so we don't really notice them. Define where is everything going on your page or on your canvas. Next, we're going to create our color wheel. So again, I got a dirty brush. I need to clean it. Stir it up, just like you're stirring up chocolate milk. Check it out, see if there's some more paint on it. If there is, you might just be able to wipe it off. We want a nice clean brush each time we're done with a color. So far, my color wheel just has yellow. We remember red and blue are my next two colors of my three primary colors. Red and blue should go here. When you're ready, go ahead. Grab that kind of medium-large brush again to get a nice scoop of each of those other primary colors. So I'm going to go for red. I'm going to take a nice scoop. Clean my brush. And then I'm going to take a nice scoop of blue. And clean my brush again. Now, white and black do not belong on the color wheel. If we add white to one of our colors, it's going to make a tint. So what we did in the beginning here was we made a tint with yellow. If we wanted to make a shade, we would add black. But we do not need white and black in our color wheel. Maybe you're thinking about, well, what am I going to do with this brown that I have, right? Brown is actually made if we mix all three of these colors together, which sounds easy enough, but it's actually a bit difficult. So that's why we have the brown paint, is so that we don't have to try to make brown if we don't want to. So we have that there for you. All right, my brush is nice and clean. First color I'm going to make, let's make green first, okay? When you're working with a light color and a dark color of paint, you're going to need a lot less of the dark color than the lighter color, okay? I'm looking at blue and yellow, and you can see yellow is quite a bit lighter than blue, so I'm going to need quite a bit less blue than yellow. So I'm going to start with a nice scoop of yellow. I'm just going to take a brand new scoop for my green. So I'm taking a nice size scoop of yellow. I'm going to put it right over here on my color wheel. I'm heading toward my blue because I'm going to mix those together. I'm going to scoop off everything from my brush, clean it up. And I'm just going to start with just a tiny, tiny bit of blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, and I'm just going to dip my corner of my brush in my blue paint. Okay? If you have too much blue in your yellow right away and you want to lighten it up, you can always make a brand new puddle here, start fresh with yellow and maybe just take your brush that has the really, really blue-green, just mix that dirty brush in with a new puddle here if it gets too dark on you, because it's going to be really, really hard to lighten up a color if it gets too dark. If it gets really, really dark right away, it's going to be easier to just start new than it would be to try to lighten it up. You'd end up with a lot of green, which, you know, maybe is what we want. Maybe most of your landscape is going to be green. It's going to be your choice. Another way to make green, and I'm cleaning my brush, because I don't want to grab yellow with a dirty brush, but another trick to making green is take a scoop of yellow, and I'm going to put mine here. Anywhere is fine. Clean off your brush and take just a corner of your black. When we make a shade with yellow, it actually starts to look green, which is kind of cool. So grab again, same amount you did with your blue, maybe even less, I don't know. I'm gonna take a little bit less just to be sure I don't get too much. So I took even a little bit less black than I did blue, and I'm mixing it with my yellow, and it's turning it into a shade of yellow, but it's starting to look pretty green. So now I already have two different greens. Obviously, I could add more blue to either of these. I could mix these two together. I could mix some white with it. Whatever you want to do, play around with it. If you are going to have a lot of space dedicated to green, you definitely do not want it to all be the same shade of green, because that would be, you know, that'd be pretty boring. We want to make it more interesting. We want to have more greens than just, you know, one. All right, the next color we're going to make is, let's make orange next. Yellow, again, is lighter than red, okay? So start with a nice scoop of yellow. Put it on your color wheel, heading toward your red. Try to get off as much as you can. We don't want to waste our paint. I'm going to scoop off a little bit more. Clean up your brush. And red is not quite as dark as blue, so we are going to need, you know, a little bit more red than we did blue. So you don't have to be as cautious when grabbing your red. I just dipped mine in there. I might have too much. And if I do, it'll just be a really bold orange. And it kind of is. So I'm going to show you guys what I was saying with taking your dirty brush. I'm going to scoop off this excess stuff. Okay? If this is too dark of an orange for me, my dirty brush, or even just a little bit of this orange that's too dark, I'm going to make a new puddle. Okay? Clean off my brush. I don't want to grab yellow with a dirty brush. Oh, that would be so sad. My whole yellow would turn orange. So we saw how much another color will impact that yellow. So a nice clean brush, taking a new scoop of yellow, putting it into this tiny bit of orange, and now I'll have a lighter orange. So you can see the difference there. And that's what you'll want to do with green too. If your green got too dark, you know, make a new puddle. You can probably guess the last color, red and blue, to make purple. I just told you red is not quite as dark as blue, so let's start with red. Let's take a nice scoop of red, add it to our color wheel, heading toward our blue. And purple is kind of a funny color. As soon as you mix it, you might think, this is not what I think of when I think of purple. Don't worry, you can always add white to it, and then it'll start to get that classic kind of purple color that we're used to. So clean brush, dip your paint in your blue. If it's too dark, I know what I can do. But either way, I'm going to add some white to it to find out, because it's going to look almost maroon, and I might actually need a bit more blue. But I'm going to take my white paint first and find out how it's looking. I think I'm going to need a bit more blue. Here's how mine's looking. I'm going to clean off my brush before I grab that white. Grab a bit of white, and I can make part of this lighter. And you can see mine looks a bit kind of more on the red side. If I wanted to add a little bit more blue, and I know I'm getting my blue a little bit dirty, but at this point, our color wheel is done, so you can use it however you want. And we still have our clean colors in our cup. So this palette's going to be here for you to move things around, to try to mix things. If you want to try to make brown, it's going to work in a similar way. We know we need a lot of yellow, so I'm going to take a nice scoop of yellow, and I'll make my brown right in the middle. Clean my brush. Less of the darker colors than the lighter colors. So I'm going to take less red and a small amount of blue. Clean my brush again. Small bit of blue. Okay. And maybe I'll get brown. If it starts looking green, the opposite of green is red. See how it's opposite here? So if it starts looking green, I need more red. If it starts looking red, mine's looking pretty red, I'm gonna need more green. And I know green is made with yellow and blue. So, actually mine's looking kind of orange. So I think I need a bit more yellow and a bit more blue. The opposite of orange is blue. So I'm gonna probably need more blue, but I think I'm gonna also need some more yellow. So I'll take some yellow and I'll take some blue. And I should keep some space for making different blues. I'm going to make sure I do not get this space dirty because I want to have space for some blue to mix with white. So I added some yellow, I added some blue because mine was looking kind of orange, kind of red, and now I have brown. Do not be discouraged if brown is difficult for you. I think the brown that we gave you is even a nicer brown than the brown that we can make when we mix. So don't worry about mixing together your own brown. It's not a big deal. If it didn't work out, then use this brown. And I actually like this brown better. So I think when I use brown, I'll just use this. Our canvas should be starting to dry now. Yeah, mine's pretty dry. Well, mostly. If you have chunks, it's going to be a little bit still wet. But for the most part, it's pretty dry. So let's do everything that's farthest away first, and then let's move forward. So let's do our sky first. All right. The sky has a big amount of space. So I'm going to want to use a big brush to start to fill that space. Okay. Make sure yours isn't too sticky. Mine's a little sticky. I'm going to clean it a little bit better. I want my sky to be kind of blue. Blue is a pretty classic sky color. Yours can be whatever you want. But I'm going to start with a nice scoop of white. Like I said before, I'm saving this space for my light blue. So I'm going to take a nice scoop of white. And you know what? I'm just going to take some of this blue. If I'm liking this color, I can start to put some of this down. I'm going to bring this color all the way to my landmass. And mine are going to be mountains. Yours are whatever they are. Your choice. Probably we do not want the whole sky to be the same shade of blue, right? That's going to be a little bit boring. So I'm going to use all this paint. I'm going to get all this paint off my brush. And then I'm going to grab some more white. I'm going to grab a little bit of purple. It's up to you. Just keep in mind, if you are doing, you know, all the colors on your sky, remember what happens. It'll make brown if you mix it all together too much, right? Yellow, red, and blue make brown. So if I'm doing, you know, like an orange sky mixing up to a blue sky, if those two colors really, really mix, they're going to start to turn brown. So just be aware of that as you're working. And just don't blend too much. So what I'm doing to kind of blend in this purple is I'm just moving my brush back and forth. My brush was pretty dry. I got most of it off, and then I just grabbed some of that purple blue color. And I'm kind of liking how that's looking. I think I want some more white. So I'm going to clean my brush and grab some more white. Again, this is your sky. If you want your sky to be orange, I think that would be cool. Go for it. Do what feels right for your painting. And this is going to be just as, you know, realistic or abstract as you want it to be. If you want none of the colors in your painting to, you know, correlate with how things are for us in real life, that's fine. Nobody is telling you how your painting should look. It should look like whatever you want it to look like. Kind of losing my purple. I think I want to put some more purple in there. I'm going to actually take some of my maroon and see what happens. Not too much. I don't want to get too crazy. You can also kind of make, you know, move your brush in different ways to kind of blend it out. If you've got too much paint on your brush and you're trying to blend, you can remove that paint, you know, and start with kind of a clean brush. If you want to get some clouds in your sky, you can make sure you add some space for, you know, plain white. Make sure again that your brush is nice and clean. And these are your clouds. They can look however you want. While our paint is wet, it's gonna mix together. If that's kind of bothering you, you can wait for the space to dry before you start to add some more things into the sky. If you don't want them to mix together, then just wait. Just wait for it to start to dry before you do these things. One other rule of composition that I want to tell you right now is the rule of odds. The rule of odds says odd numbers are better in a painting than even numbers. Right now I have two clouds, so I'm thinking to myself, I need to put another cloud in here somewhere so that I have an odd number of clouds. And it's just, maybe you notice that it looks a bit better. In my opinion, it does. And it helps the page, it helps the viewer's eyes move around the page. Just aim for odd numbers. 1, 3, you know. If you have an even number of anything in your painting, try to add one more. All right. Our sky is going to dry rather quickly if you have less paint on it, okay? If your paint is pretty thick, it's going to take longer to dry, and that's just going to be the case, you know, all the time. The thicker the paint, the longer it takes to dry. So if you're concerned about your land color mixing with your sky color, then, give it a little bit of extra time. If you don't finish this painting, by the time the video ends, then there's nothing to say that you can't keep going. I'm going to begin with my land down here that isn't really touching my sky too much, because I know this part is dry. So if I do touch this blue here a little bit, and mine's going to be green, and I know blue isn't green, so if it does touch the blue, I'm not really going to be worried about it. But I'm going to go ahead, I feel like I'm going to need more than I have. So I'm going to get my brush a little bit wet, and I'm going to see how far this green can take me if it's a little bit wet. My brush. I'm still using my large brush, and it's not going to quite get me there. So if I want to add yellow, I know yellow is in this. If I add plain yellow, it's going to be a really kind of light color, and I can play around with that. It's always going to be easier for me to darken up a space on my canvas than it is for me to lighten it up, okay? And that especially goes for the color yellow. If you have a space that you want to be yellow, you're going to need to put down white first, let it dry, and then put yellow down. Because yellow, we saw that tiny bit of blue transform that yellow so quickly into green, so quickly into orange with that red. It's a really sensitive color, yellow, and we will lose it if we do not save it. I just took a bit of my green that I have mixed with my yellow and black, just playing around with my different colors. I definitely want my two spaces of grass to be different greens. If you just have one space of grass, you still want a bit of variation in that green. We don't want it to all be the same. That would be pretty boring. And I feel like this is a good place to leave it for now. We're going to do a couple layers on this. Layering your paint on your painting. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of smoothing out my lines. If your lines are bothering you, your brush strokes, well, they shouldn't. Because we are going to see brush strokes in this painting. But for this bottom layer, I just felt like having mine look really clean. So I went ahead and I just kind of lightly pushed my brush over my canvas. And when I pulled it up, it came up so smooth that it didn't leave that brush end line. If you want to do that, you can. It's really not important that you do not have brush strokes on your painting, because it is a painting. A painting is made with a brush. You're going to have brush strokes on there. Otherwise, you should use a different material, right? Embrace the paint, embrace the brush, and go with it. Okay. As I'm moving back in space, or for you guys, I guess it would be back in space, atmospheric perspective says things are going to start to look kind of lighter and more difficult to see. So for my next space of grass, I might want to add some of my white color to it. So it's starting to look like a lighter color, kind of a little bit more hazy. And I'm kind of destroying my palette, but I'm using it, and that's what it's there for. So don't be afraid to make that color wheel into a palette now. Now this lighter color is probably already saying to you, yeah, it looks like it is farther back in space. And that's just kind of a trick that we can play for our eyes. It says, as things get farther back in space, they get, kind of lighter. When I'm working in such a small space, I could switch to a smaller brush, and that might make more sense. I could take the corner of that brush, and I can get a nice bit of paint on that corner, and I can take that corner, I can set it into the space that I want to be that color, and I can drag it in the direction that I want that paint to go. And I just turn my brush over now to get the paint from the other side. You can do that. If you're using this kind of flat brush like I'm using, you can use the corner of it to get into those spaces that are kind of a bit smaller. My brush is now on its side rather than, painting this way. I'm now painting this way to get the smaller space filled in, and then but to still have the large enough brush that I can get the large space filled in. And this is just our first layer. I feel like mine is looking almost too similar. I'm going to lighten mine up a bit. I'm going to grab a bit more of that light color and lighten mine up. Clean my brush. We got a bit more white. But again, yours is whatever colors you want it to be. I think it would be more fun if it wasn't too realistic. I think that's more fun. But it's your call. Okay. So I've got my 2 land spots. Now I'm going to do my mountain spot, and I think my mountains are going to be kind of like a grayish brown is what I'm thinking. So to make gray, I need a bit of white. Which is darker, white or black? So how much black am I going to need? Yeah, a tiny bit. All this white paint. This might even be too much black paint. A tiny, tiny bit of black. That might be too much. I'm going to take some of it off and see what happens. No, it was okay. I'm going to take it back in. Okay. So now I've got gray. Oops, accidentally got a little bit of red in there, but I don't think I mixed it in. So now I've got a gray. And if I like the color, I can stick with it. If I don't, I can change it. Maybe you'll notice I have 3 mountains. I was thinking about that rule of odds earlier when I was making my mountains. Should have said something earlier. But you can still change your composition at this point. Obviously 2 mountains would be fine. You don't have to always have 3 of everything. I think people, when they looked at your painting, if there were 3 of everything in it, they would think, okay, this person is really in love with the number 3. And that might be, it might just look more strange than if you did have a couple even numbers. So keep the rule of odds in mind, but don't let it control your painting too much. So mine is kind of blurring in with my sky a bit. And I said I wanted some brown in there, so I'm going to take some of my brown, and I'm going to start putting a little bit of brown into these mountains and see if I like that better. I'm actually able to look at my painting in my screen, and what you can do to get an idea of how your painting is going to look from farther away is look at it either from farther away. You can squint your eyes to look at it. That'll give you that kind of perspective like the computer does, as though you're looking at it from farther away. And it'll kind of guide you as to what does it need. Because when we are so close to our painting like we are right now, it's really hard to know what the painting needs. So right now, as I'm painting and I'm getting a little bit more loose with it, I'm painting with my eyes squinted. So it looks like it's farther away from me. And you can go ahead and try that too. Now I need a little bit of variation. It's all kind of looking like the same color. So while mine is still wet, I'm going to add a little bit of white to mine. My brush is clean. I'm going to take my white and just kind of start to lighten up, maybe even just one side of each of these mountains, so it looks like they have a little bit more form. And this is going to kind of give that illusion that now that I've defined this side as being light, now I'm saying my sun is here, because my sun is shining onto this side of my mountains. So I want to keep that in mind as I continue to move on with my painting, that, okay, everything that's going to be brighter is going to need to be on this side, because this is where my light is hitting my mountains. And now that I keep saying light, I'm kind of feeling like I want to add a little bit of yellow to this, to these white spaces, and see if that's kind of fun. And I think I'm going to move to a smaller brush. Move to different brushes as you see fit. It's always a good idea to change your brush. You don't want to have the same brush for your whole painting. We want those different brush strokes. I do like that yellow a bit better. We do want those different brush strokes in our painting. It'll be a bit boring if we're using all the same brush strokes, all the same brush. That's okay, nice. Now I want to start thinking about what's going to happen on my grass. And now that I'm thinking about that, I think since this space is closer to me, I think I want to put some flowers, maybe a tree in that space. Things that are closer to us look larger, okay? Like here are my two hands. Now that I move this hand closer to you, see how much larger it is? So my flowers or my tree or whatever that's going to be in this space that's closer to me are going to look bigger, okay? Whatever's in this space is farther away is going to look smaller. And right now, the way I'm kind of feeling like I want this space to take up more space. So I think I'm going to actually do that. I'm going to change my composition a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit of blue, big old bit of yellow, and I'm going to make a similar color to this as I can. Actually, that's quite a bit darker, but I'm just going to go with it. And I want to take up quite a bit more space. So I think I'm going to actually bring it all the way to here. Ooh, or maybe even higher. I'm kind of liking how that's looking. Yeah, I'm just gonna go for it. And this looks quite a bit more blue than it does yellow. So I think what I need is, you know, a bit more yellow. So I'm gonna take, yeah, I'm liking that better. And I actually kind of like that this space is a different kind of green than this space, but I wanna have it feel a bit more unified. So I'm just gonna bring some yellow down here. And this is starting to dry. So if I paint on this too much before it's totally dry, it's gonna start to lift up the paint and remove it from the page. So you might wanna give that a moment. And I think I'm gonna give mine a little moment to start to dry a bit before I start putting flowers or grass there. So since I wanna keep this space and be kind of delicate with it, I think I'll start moving over here. And you choose what makes the most sense with you. Mine's not quite dry, and I don't want to be pulling that paint off the page. That can be frustrating. If that starts happening to you, let it dry. Just leave it, walk away from it, come back to it, and then put some fresh paint on top, because it can be maddening trying to fix a spot that you've been pulling paint off. You're trying to fix it, and you're just pulling more and more paint off. Take a nice chunk of paint, put it on top, walk away, okay? Let it dry. So I want to add a little bit of texture to this space. I'm going to pretty much leave that as it is, but I think I want a little bit of texture to it. So I'm going to take a little bit of white and yellow. Maybe even orange. Maybe I want to get a little bit more fun with this. I think I do. But I want my brush to be kind of dry. So I'm gonna kind of scoop off the extra stuff. So now my brush is looking like it only has a little bit of paint on it. So as I start getting some texture on here, it's not gonna be globbing onto it. It's not gonna take up so much space. So it'll blend a bit easier into this area. And that's kind of fun. As I'm doing this space where my land is touching land, I'm moving my brush upside down now to kind of pull that paint up to keep that line nice right there. I like how that looks. And I think I'll even add maybe a bit of white. It's not too noticeable what I'm doing right now, but it is adding a little something to the painting. A little bit more interest. We don't want to leave any space of this looking unfinished or forgotten. And now that I'm looking at my sky and I'm kind of thinking about playing with my colors a little bit more, I almost want to add some pink to my sky. Maybe I'll wait. Maybe I'll add pink flowers. I just feel like playing with colors now. Maybe I'll add pink flowers. So red plus white is a tint of red, and it's going to make pink. So I've already got red on my messy palette. So I'm going to take, with a clean brush, a bit of white and mix that with some of my red to make pink. I'm going to definitely go for an odd number here. unless I do them small enough that you can't really count them. How big do I want these to be? You know what? I don't want them to be too big. So I'm going to use a smaller brush. And this is, whatever you do is fine. Whatever you want to do for yours is absolutely great. If you want part of yours to be yellow, I'll remind you of this. You need it to start out white. So if you want part of it to be yellow, if you want yellow flowers or something, take some white and say, okay, this space is going to be yellow. The space that I have this white, I'm going to set it down. I'm going to let it dry. And then I'm going to put yellow on top. You're not going to get yellow if you don't start with white. You can't put yellow on, you can put yellow on green, but it's going to look green. It's not really going to look yellow. You can do whatever you want. But if you want it to look yellow, you're going to need that white. And I'm kind of playing with it. This space is looking kind of closer to me, I think is what I'm going to do. And I like how that looks. So I'm going to again use a small brush. I'm going to use a different one this time just to mix it up. So I used my small brush. Now I'm using my smallest brush just to kind of try to mix it up a little bit. So now I'm going to add some spots of pink. And I'm going to make them a little bit of a different shape. And you guys can't even see that too much, can you? I'm going to scoot a little bit closer. And mine's kind of turning into just a field of flowers here, which wasn't necessarily what I was thinking going in. Just kind of happened. Just looking at the composition and thinking what needs a little bit more. I think I want something in this space. I'm planning on putting a tree here. So I don't need too much going on there, but I shouldn't have it look so different. Yeah, I definitely want a tree there. So I'm gonna do a tree next. The thing about trees is it's not a rectangle and then things coming off of it. It's a line that's the side of the trunk that leads to a branch. And then it's a line from the other side of the trunk that leads to another branch, okay? So don't think about the tree as being multiple shapes. Think about it as being multiple lines, okay? Let's try that. Like I said, I like this brown better. I'm gonna use this brown. We can always make this tree fatter. We cannot make this tree thinner, okay? At this point, we're doing really good. We're nearly done. So we don't want to make it too big and then feel like we can't make it smaller because we can't. So decide where it's going to go. Take your brush. You can kind of twist it as you define the branch. Okay. Then we'll do the other side. I don't want it to be too fat. So I'm going to keep it nice and close. And I'm going to kind of twist it as I bring it up. Okay. And then I can do the same thing in the middle. I can kind of define the middle. Bring a branch, kind of twist it, twist my brush a little bit. And this is going to create that shape of a tree. So give that a try. You can always widen this up as you want. You don't need too many branches if you're going to have leaves on your tree, which I think I am. If you're having a tree, you don't even have to have a tree. You can be doing something totally different. Whatever you're doing, you should be getting those details now to finish the painting to make yourself feel like you're happy with it and it's good. I feel like my tree looks kind of too small. I want to make my tree bigger. So I'm going to kind of go the other way with it. I think I like how that uses that space a bit better. Yeah, I think I'm liking how that's looking. So now that I'm happy with that, I can see, is my white ready? Not quite yet. I'm going to give my white a little bit more time to dry before I put my yellow on top. Brush strokes on your tree make so much sense for bark, right? So don't worry about brush strokes. Just like I said before, brush strokes are good. I kind of want my tree to come out a little bit. Yeah, that's fun. Maybe down here even, but not too much. Yeah, that's fun. And this tree is looking like it's out of place because it doesn't really have anything saying that the sun, remember we said the sun was over here, saying that the sun is here. I want to give a little bit of a shadow. I don't need to go too crazy, but I do need to do something that says, hey, this tree is also catching some light and casting a shadow. And remember, my sun is here, so my shadow is going to be over there. So I'm taking some blue, taking some yellow, and I'm making a green. It's going to be a little bit darker to say, yeah, this tree is here. It is casting, oh, not too dark though. That's too dark. I'm going to lighten that up a little bit. It is casting a shadow, but my shadow doesn't need to be too crazy. That's probably better. Yeah, that's looking good. I'm going to kind of go around my flowers a little bit. Yeah, and maybe I'll give it a little bit more space because I'm going to put some leaves on this tree. Maybe even a little bit more. Here. Yeah, I think that looks pretty nice. Now I'm going to take my chosen color, and maybe since I was really wishing I had some color, maybe I should make my, no, I'm going to kind of go classic. I'm going to go with green. You guys can have more fun with yours. I'm going to go with that green for mine. And I want my green to be different than the ones I've got, so I'm going to do a kind of a blue and black and yellow combo for this one. So I'm going to add some black to that blue that that green that I just had. Start getting some of that color in there. Again, we don't want this to all be the same. the same shade of green. So I'm going to just define part of it with this, and then I'm going to change up my green. Now I think I'll add some more yellow to my green. And I almost feel like mine's missing something. Maybe I need some bigger flowers in mine. Like something, I can need something else. I'm gonna try adding a bit of grass. If I made it taller. That's something. That's something. I think that might be doing it for me. I think I'm liking that. But I think it's a bit too dark, so I'm gonna lighten it up. I think this is making me happy. I think I need a bit of bold lines here. I'm gonna keep going with that. Kind of too dark again. I'm gonna lighten that up again. And now I've kind of lost where is my shadow. So since I made that kind of so dark, I need to make my shadow, my tree, a little bit darker. There we go. And I think what I really want is orange in this. I didn't get that yellow in it yet. Let me see. I'm gonna add some yellow onto these spots that are supposed to be white. And a bit of orange too, and see how that goes. I'm gonna start with the orange. But yeah, that's doing it for me. And yours, again, is however you want it to look. I'm gonna make mine kind of big oranges. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So I'm taking my orange and I'm just kind of placing it down in kind of big clumps. And I want you to do the same thing. I want you to look at yours and think about, okay, what's going to make me happy with this right now? What do I need to do to feel like, yes, this is making me happy. This is where I want it to be. What do you need to add to yours to feel like it's complete for you? For me, I think these orange flowers are doing it. And as they get farther away, they're going to get small, small, small. Maybe a couple more really big ones. And I want to go back in with that yellow. I did not forget about my yellow. And that yellow can sit right on top of that white, and you will see that's where it's really going to show up, is if you have that white down underneath that yellow, it's going to really let it sit on top. I think I just want to add a little bit of extra texture to my tree. Lightened up the side where the sun was, and maybe I'll darken up the side where the sun isn't. I'm using a very, very tiny, tiny, tiny bit of black. And I think I want a couple more leaves in my tree, and then I think I'm done. You decide what's going to be right for your painting. What looks like it needs a little something else? What part do you want to spend some more time on? What part do you not want to spend any more time on? Are you done? Is there something else that you want to add to make this a little bit more interesting for you? Look at yours and decide what else does it need? And whatever you think, that's what you should try. If you feel like you're not sure what to do, you want to leave it, sleep on it, come back to it, do that. I'm happy with mine now, and I'll show you mine. Mine's kind of a simple one. Yours might have had some different colors. Yours might have been a little bit more wild than mine. Mine's kind of classic, and I'm happy with it. I hope you're happy with yours too. I hope you had fun, and I hope you paint. I hope you keep painting. You got some good tricks in your toolbox now. This should be the first of many. Keep up the great work, guys.